between the two world champions, Norris and Hamilton. However, that wasn't the only time we saw them in action, as Norris, just like his teammate Piastri, drifted around the first turn and Hamilton spun out. But thanks to Colapinto, who later had to retire due to a problem, and thanks to Behrman, this wasn't the only spin of the session. By the way, in that frame I probably saw the Aston Martin car in action for the first time, but that's another story. We also had Lindblad retiring, and in the end, the weekend kicked off with a dominant performance by Mercedes, who were half a second ahead of the rest of the field. Yeah, that's just unfair. In sprint qualifying, Q1 was anything but a surprise. All 6 drivers in the bottom 3 cars were eliminated without any incidents. In Q2, we had the 2 Red Bulls, both of which struggled to get through. To be fair, Verstappen made a mistake on his lap caused by Colapinto, who didn't left the racing line, but it still shows that the car isn't where it should be. We also had Behrman, who once again managed to beat Ocon, and Gasly, who did the same to Colapinto, even though that's not much of a surprise anymore. In Q3 then, there was again less excitement as Russell and Antonelli easily secured P1 and P2, but this time even more than 6 tenths. Norris put in a strong lap for P3, Hamilton beat Leclerc, China is really one of his favorite tracks, and Gasly, who also secured a very strong 7th place. In the sprint race, just like in Australia, there were a lot of position changed at the start. Antonelli nearly came to a standstill and dropped back to 8th place, Hülkenberg fell from 11th to 20th, and Verstappen also lost a lot of positions. The winners, on the other hand, were once again the 2 Ferraris. And while Russell was able to defend his first place position at the start, a battle soon broke out between him and Hamilton, who kept overtaking him. Russell finally managed to pull away on lap 6, and Hamilton eventually had to let Leclerc pass as well. And regardless of whether the duel was staged due to the new regulations, in my opinion there's no denying that it was still exciting. After his poor start, Antonelli was also handed a 10-second penalty due to contact with Hajar. He served this during the safety car period, which was caused by Hülkenberg, who just like Lindblad and Bottas had to pull over, but unlike them was unable to make it back to the pit lane. When the race resumed, the order was like this and didn't really change from there. Hamilton overtook Norris to secure a double podium finish for Ferrari, Verstappen narrowly missed a comeback to the points, and Russell won the Chinese sprint. 3 hours later, it was already time for qualifying for the main race, and once again, just like in the sprint qualifying, the same 6 drivers from the same 3 teams were eliminated, so the gap between them and the rest of the field really seems to be huge. In Q2 there was the second crash of the season, caused by Bortoleto, though it didn't trigger safety. Nevertheless, the same drivers who had been eliminated in sprint qualifying in Q2 were eliminated in qualifying in Q2, which meant that alongside the top teams, Gasly and Behrman once again made it into Q3. In the final qualifying session, Russell suddenly came to stop, and just when everyone thought his qualifying run was over, he managed to make it back to the pit lane. While his mechanics did everything they could to fix the problems, the other drivers were already able to complete their first laps, during which Antonelli managed to position himself ahead of the 2 McLarens. When it was time for the final attempts, Antonelli set a time that none of the other teams could beat. His teammate Russell, however, got one last attempt and, without a proper warm-up lap, since he had to go full throttle, managed to put in a clean lap, which in the end though was only enough for 2nd place, crowning Antonelli the youngest F1 pole sitter. But now to the question, could he defend that position in a race? Before the race even started, disaster struck for the 2 McLarens, both of which had to be pushed into the pit lane and were unable to start. Albon and Bortoleto were also unable to start, leaving only 18 drivers on the grid. The race was far from boring, as the 2 Ferraris once again managed to overtake the 2 Mercedes at the start. There was plenty of action behind them as well. The Alpine secured 5th and 6th place, while Verstappen had yet another disastrous start. The 2nd Red Bull, driven by Hajar, also spun out and fell to the back of the field, forcing him to pit. Over the next few laps, the Mercedes cars regained their positions, and just as the race seemed to be getting boring, a safety car came out, because Stroll had to retire his car. Most of the drivers pitted during the safety car period, and then the race continued. And what a race we get to see after the restart. First, the frontrunners had to fight their way through the pack of drivers who hadn't yet pitted, and once they'd done that, the tension didn't let up. Quite the opposite. Lap after lap, the two Alpines and the two Haas cars fought a heated battle for position 5 to 8, swapping places several times per lap, and eventually Verstappen joined the fight as well. Just as that battle settled down, the next one broke out between Hamilton and Leclerc. They battled for laps, and the overtakes were a joy to watch for us. The same went for Russell, who watched the whole thing unfold and then finally passed both Ferraris. After Ocon crashed into Colapinto, the race calmed down a bit, with fewer overtakes. For Verstappen, the weekend was over when he had to retire the car due to a mechanical problem, and with that ended up scoring not a single point this weekend. After Leclerc locked up his brakes, Hamilton managed to secure third place, and then the race was already over. The results: Colapinto got the first point of his F1 career, Hadjar earned his first points for Red Bull, Bierman drove to a strong 5th place finish and is now actually in 5th place in the driver's standings, Hamilton secured his first podium for Ferrari, and Kimi Antonelli not only became the youngest F1 pole sitter this weekend, but also the second youngest race winner behind Verstappen and ahead of Vettel. But now to the question, was this one of the best F1 races in recent years? I mean, we had some fantastic racing and a thrilling race. In my opinion, it was definitely a good race. Whether it was one of the best is something you can decide in the comments. Thanks for watching and see you at the next race.